Let me give you the good side of boredom in general. Boredom is a tendency for us to not be occupied otherwise cognitively, which switches over our thinking system to use a part of our brain that's called the default mode network. That sounds fancy. It's really not. The default mode network is a bunch of structures in your brain that switch on when you don't have anything else to think about. So you forgot your phone and you're sitting at a light, for example. That's when your default mode network goes on. We don't like it. My colleague in the psychology department here at Harvard, Dan Gilbert, he did experiments where people had to sit in a room for 15 minutes with instructions to do absolutely nothing, and there was nothing in the room to do except there was a button in front of them that they could push, and if they did, they gave themselves a painful electric shock. Sit there bored or get a shock. A big majority of the participants gave themselves shocks instead of thinking about nothing. We don't like boredom. Boredom's terrible. Why is boredom so bad? Well, because the default mode network makes us think about things that might be kind of uncomfortable. When you think about nothing, well, your mind wanders and thinks about, for example, big questions of meaning in your life. What does my life mean? You go to kind of uncomfortable existential questions when you're bored. That turns out to be incredibly important, incredibly good. One of the reasons that we have such an explosion of depression and anxiety in our society today is because people actually don't know the meaning of their lives, much less so in previous generations. Tons of data show this. And furthermore, we're not even looking. Why not? I'll tell you why not. We figured out a way to eliminate boredom. We've been able almost completely to shut off the default mode network in our brains. How? The answer is that thing in your pocket with the screen, which you take out even when you're standing on the street corner waiting for the light to change. Is like, I might have to wait here for 15 seconds. What are you doing? You're actually trying to not be bored because the default mode network is mildly uncomfortable because it sends you to the types of questions that you can't get your mind around, you can't get your arms around. Well, that's a big problem. That's a doom loop of meaning. If every time you're slightly bored, you pull out your phone, it's going to get harder and harder for you to find meaning. And that's the recipe for depression and anxiety and a sense of hollowness, which, by the way, are all through the roof. I get it. You don't want to be bored. You need to be bored. Be bored more. Tomorrow, when you go to the gym in the morning after you wake up, don't take your phone. Can you handle it? Not listening to a podcast while you're working out? Just being in your head? I promise you'll have your most interesting ideas while you're working out without devices. It's probably been a long time since you've done that. Commute with nothing, not even the radio. Can you do that? Start getting better at periods that are 15 minutes and longer of boredom and watch your life change. Number one, you'll be less bored with ordinary things in your life. If you get better at the skill of boredom, you'll be less bored with your job. You'll be less bored with your relationships. You'll be less bored with the things that are going on around you. But more importantly, you'll start digging into the biggest questions in your life: purpose, meaning, coherence, significance. And who knows, you might just get happy. Here. People ask me all the time, is the doctor taking his own prescriptions? And the answer is yes. Yes, I am. I'm prone to the same pathologies as anybody else because I have the same brain chemistry as everybody else. So what do I do to fight that? And the answer is, well, I do a number of things. I have a no device policy after 7 in the afternoon. I don't sleep with my phone. We don't have devices when we have meals in my family, because we're there for each other. We're not there for people who aren't there. 3, I have regular social media and screen cleanses where I don't use my device for longer periods of time. First, it's like children screaming in my head. Well, because that's how, dopamine is saying, get the phone, get the phone. That's addiction. But it calms down and I feel better and I feel sort of blessed by the end. And, I pick the phone up by the end because I have to check my emails and I have to be a normal, functioning, connected person in the world. But it does remind me that my life doesn't have to revolve around these devices. These protocols are really, really helpful. And I recommend them to anybody and everybody. Don't sleep with your phone. no phones during meals, regular social media fasts, you'll get better. People worry that if they do these things, they're gonna miss something. There are ways that you can remedy that. One of the things that you can do is you can have your phone on, you're just not looking at it, and there's only 1 or 2 numbers that can reach you in case of emergencies. Phones can do that, by the way. If you don't know how to do that, ask your kid. But don't use emergencies as an excuse. Here's something that's not an emergency. What's going on Twitter? That's not an emergency. Answer nothing. It doesn't matter. The news can wait. Seriously, your grandparents didn't know what was going on every single second in Washington, D.C. You're killing yourself with this stuff. Are you kidding me? It's bad for you. So let me say it straight to my kids. Put down your phones. You need more meaning in your life.
This video will save you 10 or more entire years of your life from being wasted. And the reason I know this is because we spend an ungodly amount of time on our phones. The average person spends 4 hours a day, every single day, staring at this thing. And you might be thinking, but Maxwell, you literally just said it was the average. 4 hours a day is the average, the normal. That's not even that much, right? But when you do the math and you add up the hours, it becomes very apparent to how much 4 hours a day on your phone really is. 4 hours a day on your phone is the equivalent to 1,460 hours a year. And I know that number probably doesn't mean anything to you, but if I assume you live to 80 years old and I subtract the, 13 years you didn't have a phone, then you're gonna end up spending 11.5 years of your entire life spent on your phone. Bro, 11 and a half years is a long ass time just to be spent. The magnitude of that is insane. They say it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. So if you would have spent just 10% of that time in the future, you spend it working on a skill, developing a skill, you would have mastered that skill still. You'd have become really, really good at something. A few weeks ago, I made some changes to my phone that have greatly impacted the amount of time I spend on my phone and have greatly increased my productivity. And coming from someone who did spend the 4-5 hours a day on my phone, I'm telling you that these changes will help you spend less than an hour a day on your phone. And I know that probably sounds crazy to most of you, and you might think that an hour a day on your phone is extremely low, but if you are consistently intentional and mindful about the time you spend on your phone, you will be able to get there. You will have saved and regained 9 or more years of your life. And those are 9 years that would have been spent scrolling and doing things that didn't bring you any value. So here are the 7 changes that I made to my phone that have helped me spend less than an hour a day on my phone every single day. The first step is a very simple one, and it's just to turn on silent mode. There's that little button on the side of the phone that you can turn on so that you don't get any unnecessary dings or pop-up notifications, things that you don't need. Because if you are trying to be focused, or if you're doing something that requires focus or attention or presence, like if you're with your family or you're doing work or you're doing homework, you need to be focused. I almost never turn off the do not disturb or silent mode on my phone. The only time that I do is if I need my parents to send me a message or they need to be able to contact me. Other than that, I have it on almost all the time. It's a really great way to stop yourself from getting randomly distracted when you're doing something you should have presence while doing, that you should be focused while doing. The second step is to delete all the apps that you spend the most time on. And I'm guessing these are going to be the apps that are like TikTok and YouTube and Snapchat and mobile games. This step is the most important one. Out of all the other steps, if you just do one, do this step. But it is the most difficult because the apps that you spend the most time on obviously are going to be the ones you are most attached to. You can come up with as many excuses and copes as you like, but the truth is, this is the one thing that will reduce the amount of time you spend on your phone the most. Now, the third step that goes right along with the last step I just told you about is to delete all of the apps from your homepage. I only have 4 apps on my home screen, and I really only need 2 of them because I just use them to message my family and my friends. Everything that you know might be problematic, delete it from your homepage. It forces you to be a lot more intentional and mindful when you are on your phone, and not to just randomly and mindlessly open an app without thinking about it. The 4th step and all the steps after this are going to be in the settings app. And the first setting you should change is your notifications. Turn the notifications off for all of your apps, all of the ones that you don't use, all the ones that you really don't want notifications on anyways. Because a lot of the notifications that you get just notify you about useless, unimportant things. It's information that you don't need. If there are some apps that you need to keep on for health purposes or to stay connected with your family or whatever, that's fine. But what I even did with my messages app and the other apps where I receive messages from people is I turned off all of the notifications that you get from your front screen. You can do this by going to a specific app in notifications and turning off all the front page notifications that it gives you. And if that app is something that you want to know how many notifications you have, you can just keep on the badges. This will keep that red circle over the app that will show you how many unread messages you have. The 5th and 6th step kind of go together, and it's to turn off tap to wake and rise to wake. You can find raise to wake through display and brightness, and you can find tap to wake through accessibility and then going to touch. You've probably noticed how your phone will instantly turn on if you pick it up. This makes it super easy to subconsciously open your phone without thinking about it. So turning raise to wake off makes sure that your phone doesn't turn on when you pick it up. Turning tap to wake off makes it so that you can't tap your phone to unlock it. Both of these 2 ways of unlocking your phone are very mindless and unintentional. Once you turn these 2 settings off, you're going to realize that you're going to be trying to tap your phone to open it, but it will only open if you click the side button. This will make you think about going on your phone when you go on your phone, which will make you go on it less. The 7th and final step is to turn on the grayscale color filter. You can find this by going to accessibility and then going to display and text sizes. This last one might seem kind of weird, kind of extreme, but it makes your phone just so much less interesting. When you have the grayscale filter on and there's no color, it's a lot harder for you to stay on your phone for long periods of time. It's less interesting. And I know this setting in particular will be very difficult for some people to keep on because we're so used to so much sensory stuff right in your face. And so when you look at your phone and there's no color, it seems very, very boring, very, very uninteresting. It's going to be annoying and weird and boring, which means you're going to spend less time on your phone. So those are the 7 changes that I made to my phone that helped me not get lost in that void. And like I said in the beginning of this video, this isn't going to be easy. This isn't going to be fast. It's going to take time for you to reduce the amount of time you spend on your phone. And these settings are probably going to feel really weird and really annoying at first, but just stick with them. And something else I want to mention is to get the Chrome extension unhooked for YouTube. I've had it for probably a year now, and it saved me hours and hours of time from being wasted on YouTube. Something else that you can do if you have a Windows computer is turn off show desktop items. You can do this by going to the front page of your computer and right-clicking on it, and then going to view and then clicking off show desktop items. If you're one of the 20% that actually went and turned on all of these settings, you should be proud of yourself. This is going to hugely increase your productivity.
Spends. Probably.
And help you make so much
So far, we've spoken about all of the wonderful benefits that sleep provides. But how much sleep should we actually be getting? For the average adult, the current recommendation is somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And what we've been finding from large-scale epidemiological studies is that using that reference point of 7 to 9 hours, once you start to drop below that, your mortality risk actually starts to increase. In fact, the Center for Disease Control in the United States, or the CDC, they stipulate a minimum of 7 hours of sleep a night for the average adult. In other words, the shorter your sleep, the shorter your life. But it turns out that it's not quite a linear relationship as you would expect. It's not as though the more and more that you sleep, the lower and lower your mortality risk is. In fact, something strange happens. Once you get past 9 hours, you actually start to see a rise back up in mortality risk, which seems rather strange and peculiar. And scientists have actually put forward at least 2 different explanations. The first is that if you look at those studies, it may be that individuals are suffering from significant disease and illness. When we become infected or we have disease, typically we try to sleep longer, we stay in bed longer. So in other words, it was the unmeasured disease and sickness in those studies that was triggering a response in those individuals to try and sleep more. That's one explanation. The second possible explanation is poor sleep quality, because we know that sleep quality, independent of sleep quantity, is also associated with mortality risk. And the lower that your quality of sleep is, the higher your risk of death. People who have poor quality of sleep will typically try to sleep longer. They'll try to stay in bed longer to overcome that poor quality of sleep. It may be poor quality of sleep masquerading as long sleep that is associated with a higher risk of death, rather than the long sleep itself. But if we take a step back and think about society overall, I think modernity is constantly pushing us to perhaps work long hours and therefore neglect our sleep. But if we want to be around long enough to get the benefits and the fruits of all of that hard labor, we may want to think about starting to prioritize our sleep some more.
So how many hours should you sleep at night? It's a great question. The answer for most adults is somewhere between 6 and 8 hours a night, but this is variable. Everyone knows someone who gets 5 hours at night and does perfectly fine. But most adults need between 6 and 8 hours a night to be functional, and that's the key, is how functional are you? If you feel like you're sleep deprived, you're tired, you're not functioning well, then it's important to look at how you're sleeping. And what's most important about sleep is maintaining a routine, something we call sleep hygiene, as best as you possibly can. So you want to try to avoid things that can disrupt your sleep cycle. What can disrupt your sleep cycle? Well, lots of caffeine late at night, which is a stimulant. Eating late at night can give you heartburn and wake you up. Certainly alcohol, as we all know, can give you a bad night's sleep as well. There are other medications which routinely interrupt with your sleep cycles as well. And so trying to maintain consistent habits, that's really, really important. Anytime you start altering your habits, you alter your sleep cycle, and oftentimes you're not going to feel well rested the next day. If you have any questions about your sleeping habits or you're having difficulty with your sleep habits, by all means, please make an appointment with your primary care physician.
Sleep is so important. We need it to live. And when we can't sleep, we're desperate for help.
4.
But lately, our fascination with sleep feels as if it's taken on an urgency. Do a quick internet search for sleep, and you'll find a slew of articles about how to make your sleep perfect. New gadgets, fancy alarm clocks, stay away from blue light. There are lots of services, products, and advice columns that tell us we're sleeping wrong. Not enough, not quality sleep, wrong position. Even worse, you might find scary messaging claiming that if you're not sleeping right, your life is going to be shorter. You're going to get all kinds of diseases. One of the biggest worries we have about our sleep is that we're not getting enough, and that anything less than 7 hours a night means that we're doomed to bad health. Everything from high blood pressure to Alzheimer's disease. But there are two flaws with this kind of messaging. The first flaw is that it's not completely accurate. 7 to 8 hours of sleep, while recommended for adults, is just an average. And while messages have to be simplified for health communication to the public, sometimes important nuances get lost. So yes, it's true that not getting enough sleep in the long term is associated with health problems like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and depression, but fixating solely on 7 to 8 hours ignores the fact that there's a range of sleep that people need. The duration of a good night's sleep can be different for different people. Some adults need 8, but some are just fine on 6. The second flaw with this kind of doomsday messaging is that it can be counterproductive, especially for people who do have trouble sleeping. For instance, in 2019, it was estimated that 21% of adults in the US were wearing sleep tracking devices, and that number's probably growing. And I get it. It's fascinating to see how much sleep you've gotten each night and to know what part of your night was spent in deep sleep or dreaming. But having all of that sleep data is causing some people to become obsessed with it. So much so that it's leading to a condition some call orthosomnia, a preoccupation with the constant need to achieve perfect sleep. And this condition, ironically, is causing more sleep problems. Now, orthosomnia might be an extreme example, but the anxiety of not getting enough sleep is keeping some of us up at night. So here's what some experts are saying. Stop fixating on the number, because that can lead to unrealistic expectations of sleep. According to Dr. Colleen Carney, a psychologist and the head of the Ryerson University Sleep Lab, the basic questions you should ask yourself are, do I feel reasonably well rested during the day? Do I generally sleep through the night without disturbances? Or if I wake, Do I fall back asleep easily? Can I stay awake through the day without involuntarily falling asleep? If your answers are yes to all three, you probably don't need to worry about your sleep. And if you're struggling with your all through the day without involuntarily, do I fall back asleep easily? Can I stay awake through the day without involuntarily falling asleep? Generally sleep through the night without just through the day with, or if I wake during the day. Do I generally sleep through the night, stay awake through the day without involuntarily falling asleep? If your answers are yes to all three, you probably don't need to worry about your sleep. And if you're struggling with your sleep, instead of buying expensive blue light filters or fancy sleep trackers, try talking with your doctor to make sure there aren't any medical conditions that need to be explored first. Then, try evidence-based recommendations laid out by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. What's really cool is that there's a highly effective therapy called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia, or CBTI. It doesn't have any medications involved, and it has a really low failure rate.